I'm Debbie, Owl and Gator Stitcher. Welcome to Flosstube number 5. Today is Thursday, March 11th, 2021. This is a channel primarily about cross stitch, a little bit about reading, a little bit about what I'm watching, and maybe a little bit of life thrown in. So thank you for taking time to stop on by. There are a few other Flosstubers I would like to thank who gave me a shout out. So that's Debbie from Creatively Yours, Lori from Once Upon a Stitch, Kim the Contented Stitcher, and Lisa from Cross by Floss. Thank you, ladies, for all of the lovely comments that you gave about my stitching. And if you are coming over from watching their channels, thank you for stopping on by. So my big exciting news for the cross stitch world is I finally got Pattern Keeper. I do a lot of full coverage, but I have been, I don't want to say resistant to getting Pattern Keeper, but as with any new programs that you install, there's a lot to sort of get them up and running and working properly the way that you want to. So I use my tablet for almost everything, and often when I'm stitching, if I'm not watching TV, I am watching Flosstube on my tablet, and that just would not be compatible with having Pattern Keeper on there at the same time. But a couple weeks ago, my husband and I started moving things around in the house, and you can see now there's a TV behind me, and so we now have hooked up to the internet, and so I can watch Flosstube on that. I did think about then downloading Pattern Keeper onto my tablet, the one that I'm using now, but just this doesn't have a huge amount of memory, and I didn't want to start having problems because there wasn't enough memory and just slowing down the whole operating system. So I ended up buying a Samsung Galaxy tablet and that I'm using exclusively Pattern Keeper. I find using Pattern Keeper itself is very easy. What took me time was all the charts that I had in PDFs and marking off what I had already done. I have a few really large charts, and because I tend to do cross-country stitching, trying to figure out like what X this is and where it goes on the pattern could take a little bit of time. Even though I have been highlighting, I printed out the charts and was using a highlighter. Sometimes it's it was a little bit hard, but I think I've now caught up with all my charts except one, and I do find it very easy to use and to navigate. So I'm really excited I did that. Again, I was probably more inertia than anything else that kept me from starting to use it, but now that I have it, I'm really enjoying it, and I'm joining the bandwagon with all the people who sing its praises. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and show you some of my stitching. So the first piece I'm going to show you is Old World Map by Artecy. This is my oldest project. I started this project in December 2019 when I decided that I was no longer going to be a monogamous stitcher. I finished my last big project and then started a couple of projects in late 2019, and then in 2020 just took off and started a whole bunch of them. So this is my oldest one, and let me show you where I am. So I actually decided on this particular one to start in the upper right hand corner. As you can tell, I was doing it on the diagonal, but that was very slow going for me, and even though I was trying to put in a half hour, 45 minutes every day on this project, because of the confetti, I would sometimes only have a thread that was parked, get 2 or 3 stitches, and then just park it again, and then I'd have to move on to the next one, and it was just taking me a lot of time. And this is a few thousand stitches up here, and when I sort of look at it, I didn't think it was qualitatively better than the stitches that I would do on another project where it was cross-country. And so therefore I made the decision that I was going to take the park threads I had and just finish them off, and then I will start to do cross-country the way that I am more used to doing it. I will say that for most of my cross-stitching career or time, I used to do the method where you would do, in one color, all the legs of the X's in one direction and then go back and cross them all in the other direction. And I had the concern, especially in my full coverage, about the page breaks that you would see because I would go page by page. I didn't technically feather, but I used to, if I had something that would cross a page and it was 2 of the same color next to each other, I would cross over onto the next page and do those stitches. But I still would see the fine line from time to time that you can see in full coverage if you're not really careful with that. And that was part of the reason why I wanted to try the diagonal stitching. And certainly I don't have any lines in here. But on other ones that I was doing cross country, and even if I was going page by page, what I think the biggest difference is I now go X by X. So I cross both legs of my X's before I actually move on to the next stitch. And I think that because what was happening was all my fabric was getting pulled together and there was no break. And now if you're doing X by X, you don't have that sort of same pulling. At least that's the way it works for me. I don't have terribly tight stitches. I'm not so taut with all my stitches that it would be that noticeable. But I think when you have that much of everything sort of getting pulled in one direction, something getting pulled in the other direction. And so I think now that I sort of understand a little bit better on why I was having some of those issues, it wasn't a problem with cross country per se. And so I've made the decision to, on this piece, certainly go and just go cross country with it. I have another piece as well that I'm debating about it because that one is, I don't have it to show today, but it's a supersized Haid, and a max color Haid. So it's got, I think, 246 colors, and some of them are very similar. But I do have it in Pattern Keeper, so I still haven't decided if I'm going to stop doing the diagonal on that one and start pulling the colors through, or if I am going to continue doing it on the diagonal. I have one more project that I'm not working on, that I'm not going to show you today, which I will continue to do on the diagonal. It's a pattern I bought several years ago. I only have the hard copy, and so I'm not going to put that in Pattern Keeper. I like Pattern Keeper for the fact that I can highlight a symbol and use and stitch all the symbols. And if I don't have that functionality with a PDF, it doesn't matter whether it's on screen or not. It's not that helpful for me. So I will continue to use the paper pattern for that. So sorry, that was a distraction. I'm just so excited about Pattern Keeper. But coming back to this, so I do work on this half hour, 45 minutes almost every day. If I have something going on in the morning that doesn't give me time to stitch, then sometimes I don't get around to working on this. I am involved in a number of the challenge groups in Facebook. And so I was able, for one of the challenge groups, Crystal Academy, we had to stitch on something that had a fantasy creature, and there's little cherubs in this, like that guy right there is a cherub, and there's a lot more in the pattern. I pulled this out and decided to have this be my fantasy creature. I have other patterns. For example, I have one with a dragon, so I could have easily used something else, but I wanted to give this piece a little bit more love. And so I decided that this was going to be my fantasy creature. So that's Old World Map, and you have seen this in most of my videos to date. The next one that I show in almost all my videos as well, this is a Heaven and Earth design, Cats in the Toy Box, artwork by Lesley Anne Ivory. This is one I haven't seen many people working on it, but I absolutely love it. I just think the expressions and all these little kitten faces are really lovely. And I have 2 cats, and so they get into everything. And so this one just really speaks to me. And so I'm using this as my focus piece for the year. There's 2 different groups that I'm using it. One is Full Coverage Fanatics, where it's 21 and 21, which is 21,000 stitches in the year 2021. Works out to 1,750 stitches per month. I try and round that up to 2,000 because I'm also using this for semi-sane stitchers. They have WIP focus, I believe it's called, so a work in progress focus. And you get credit for every 1,000 stitches that you do. So if I'm going to do 1,750, I might as well just raise that up to 2,000. I also use it from time to time for magical stitches. We're building cabins. We can build, I think, up to 20 of them. I've only built 1 so far. I'm hoping to get my second one done soon. And also that's 2,000 stitches per cabin. So it just works out. I can double dip across it, but pushing on just a little bit more on this one. And this is part of the reason why I chose this to be my focus, is it is one of my favorite pieces that I'm working on. So here's where I am now. You can see sort of back here, this is where I started. I did start this one where I'm more comfortable in the upper left-hand corner. This right here is the halfway point. And so this, I think from the last time, what I didn't show, the last time I showed it, I had this creature, whether it's a dragon or a seahorse or a dinosaur, I'm not sure, but I finished him off there's still a little bit green down here, and around the eyeball there's a few white stitches that I need to fill in, but for the most part he is done. But I'm really happy to sort of see the next image coming through. This is a little ragdoll. All this white space here is sort of around her hat, which I haven't gotten to yet. But this is one of those things, when I looked at it on the pattern and looking at the symbols, I couldn't distinguish what this was. This little guy is quite chunky stitching, blocks of stitching, and so it was very easy to see on the pattern his outline. This one, it's just confetti all the way around, and it wasn't until I started getting her eyes coming in that I could actually see, okay, this is where her placement is. There's also a lot of, she has Krynic in her, it's just the 32 pearl, and I had used that on this chart before, but it was in the cat's ears, and I was kind of confused why I had, there wasn't a cat ear here, but now I can see that they're using it on her face. So I'm looking forward to getting more progress on it. I made great progress when I was working on this guy. Working on her, it's going to be a little bit slower because, again, she really is nothing but confetti. But this is where Pattern Keeper has been a lifesaver, because if I pull out a color, I can find all the stitches around it, and I'm not spending a lot of time trying to figure out, okay, how should I move around this? And I know some people are curious about seeing the backs, and so this is what the back looks like. So, you can see where I've carried some of the threads. I don't really worry about carrying the threads on a full coverage because they will be covered up by the images on the front. You're not going to see it through the fabric. But you can also still see sort of the outlines and sort of where I've gone. And it's made it much easier for me to do that with Pattern Keeper. So this is on a 18 count off-white Aida, and I'm doing 2/1. So the next piece, I feel like I show this every video because it's a year at Hawkhorn Hollow, and this is what the finished project will look like. And you can see that it's basically just 12 different vignettes that that represent each month of the year. I do love this piece, but I pull it out a lot more than I probably would otherwise because of the challenge groups. Because there are 12 different vignettes, whatever a prompt might give me, it will inevitably, I feel that it's in a year at Hawkhorn Hollow. So for Magical Stitches, we actually had 10 different prompts this week to 10 different prompts and 100 stitches each. So not many stitches per prompt, but up to 1,000, which is sort of par for the course for the number of stitches for the weekly challenges. And you got bonus points for the more items that you could find on the chart. So I easily found some of them. So something hot, there's a sun, something cold, something related to a bride. Well, this is a bride, so the church and a groom and her bouquet if you don't want to count the bride herself. So there's lots of things that can relate to a bride there. Something that smells bad, I said whatever was in this cauldron probably smells bad. A boat, so there's a boat in this block. Something that represents a soldier, so there's a flag in this block as well. And it's a lot of soldiers have flags on their uniforms. Certainly American military do, and I know a lot of other servicemen in other countries as well, will have their flags on their uniforms. I think the only two things I could not find in this pattern were a chicken and a horse. I know I have at least 2 other patterns that have a horse, so it's just a question of which one I'm going to do. I'm not sure that I have anything with a chicken. So as a result of that, I will probably do penalty stitches, except in Magical Stitches, it's the same amount of stitches, just put it on your oldest project. And so that would be on Old World Map. So here's where I am with Hawkhorn Hollow. Since the last time, I've got all these, like the rain showers coming in. This is April showers. I chose to go down instead of across. So this is January, now this is April. And got some of the greenery in the bottom. The house is sort of built up, these black windows, finished off the roof, got the chimneys in. I am also in Semi-Sane Stitchers, participating in a game. I don't know the name of the game, but it's basically, I think there are 7 colors and you have to choose 4 different colors and you pick 4 colors and then you try and guess an order. So everyone has a randomized code and you're trying to guess that code. So my first one, I got it in three guesses. I was able to move on to the next code, and I'm now like on my 5th or 6th guess, so I'm not doing very well. On my on the first go, I got all the 4 colors correct. So great, I know that, but I'm having a really hard time figuring out the order. That's why you see sort of that I've jumped around a little bit here. So I've been using this for magical stitches for the challenge groups, but it's, because one of them was, one of the options is green or blue. So it was easy enough up here and a little bit of greenery here for the leaves in the tree, but then I jumped down here and did the starting on the grass down there. Other was one an option, so all this copper that's in the house, I went down and went all the way down and did that. These black was one, so all of the windows. And the 4th color right now that I'm working on is pink/red, not in this one, so I use other patterns to get that. You can see I got 100 stitches exactly, and I actually stopped here, so I need to go back and finish off that black string. But since I'm still trying to figure out where black is, and I still have a couple hundred more stitches and magical stitches to work on this, it's easy enough to get done. So again, I love this pattern. This is 36 count Heartland, picture this plus, 2/1. Sorry, 2/2. Okay, so the next project I want to show you, I think many of you know this. This is Huckleberry Farm by the Blue Flower. Whoops, let me show you the cover photo first. Here's the color photo. This one has it's so many of my challenge groups it hit. So in No New Starts 2021, because we're not starting anything new, we decided to make it retrospective. And so the group admins created an event over last weekend that said, work on a chart that you purchased at a previous market. So this is normally the weekend that market would happen. It did not happen this year because they decided to cancel the event because of the pandemic. There is an online similar event, expo, in which all of the designers and the stores have opportunities to meet, and the designers can showcase their products and have stores buy them, and a lot of the stores were taking pre-orders for those. So it's just a great event for the designers and the store owners to sort of talk and meet and get to know each other a little bit better. And because of the pre-orders, it also sort of boosts sales a little bit, which is wonderful for this, for a lot of these small businesses out there. But this piece, in addition to this piece, in addition to being used for that event, I also was my Whip Go call. I wanted to do 1,000 stitches in March on this. And in addition, I'm in a group called Letters of the Month. We go A through Z, which is obviously 26 letters in the English alphabet, but you can pick 2 that you choose not to do. Most people are choosing letters towards the end of the alphabet. It sometimes can be hard to find something that begins with a Z or an X, and you're focusing on the name of the pattern only, or key motifs in the pattern. So it's not, you don't focus on the designer's name or the artwork that it's based on. And you can only use each project once for each letter. So for example, for Huckleberry Farm, I said the F from farm, but I couldn't then go ahead and use it again for H. Like once it's, I can certainly stitch on it more, but I can only, for that challenge, I can only use it once. So you need to have at least 24 projects that you can work on during a year. So this one, when I have done, I think I had a little bit of the white mountain caps done before, but certainly I brought the mountains a lot further down, and I had to get this bear done because he is so cute. So I got that done. And I think over the weekend I got in about 650 stitches on this. So I've met my letter of the month goal, which was 500 stitches for the month. I always knew that this was going to happen in March, but I didn't know about the Whip Go goal, which is 1,000 stitches. So my goal is still just to get 1,000 stitches in this, not to add them together, make it cumulative, but just double count them. So I still need about 350 stitches in this, but I really love this pattern. It was my favorite one that came out from market last year. And so again, having an excuse to pull it out is not a problem. So this is on 32 count, picture this plus Whimsey, and I'm doing 2/2. the next thing that I worked on, I showed this last time. This is the Tea Table by Serendipity Designs. It's quite an old pattern from the 1990s. It's something that I have had in my collection for a long time. About in the late 1990s is when I started moving and doing a lot of full coverage, and they would take maybe a couple of years. So a lot of these smaller patterns never got any love. So I decided to pull this one out. While the colors are a little bit dated, I still love the pattern, and I am a big tea drinker. So this one just really speaks to me. So it was my February Whip Go pull. So I think I've showed this before, but I had a few more stitches I had to get in. And then it's also been a good one for the color stitching one, because I was able to, pink was one of the colors. And so like around this peach rose. So I did this, all the stitching in the peach, but then there's some pink that goes around it as well. So this is all new. And then I would from time to time pull it up and get some greenery here. I was also able to use this for No New Starts, another one of the challenges they had, which was we were stitching for Pisces. And so this design has something that could or could not be a daffodil. That was one of the things we had to stitch for. I'm not really clear what that flower is over there, but it might be a daffodil. Certainly daffodils are yellow. And so I counted this for that activity as well. This one, I've enjoyed working on it. There is quite a bit of back stitching, as a lot of things from the 90s were, but back stitching doesn't bother me, but it is going to go away for a while, and I'll show you why in a few minutes. The next thing that I worked on is Alfordus Embroidery, Swan Lake. So that's what the final project will look like. And here is where I am now. So there. And so basically what I did this time was I had, this is like water behind them. So I filled that in, and then there will be a swan here. You can see one swan neck here, but this is water that will be under the swan over here, and then there'll be more water here. The reason why I pulled this back out, in addition to absolutely loving it, is that in Crystal Academy, one of the challenges was to stitch with a variegated thread. I have other projects that have overdyed flosses that have some variegation, but a lot of it is very muted and hard to see. And this one, I think there is no question about the variegation. So you can't really, all of this down here and all of this over here is actually the same floss. And that just sort of, you can see the different colors and see the variegation. So it's all from, the same skein of floss. And so I think it's absolutely lovely. And just the way, I've been going across like this with the colors to sort of make sure I could have the ripples. I wasn't fussy cutting it or anything like that, but whenever I finished off one, one thread, I would make sure that when I picked up with the next thread that the ends matched, so I could keep the flow going. This is from a kit that I purchased from Forest Embroidery, and so it's the kit linen. It's about it's a 32 count gray linen that came in the kit, and the needle minder also came from them, and the floss all comes directly from Forest Embroidery. This is one I do have to do under magnification, even though I think it's 32 count. The spaces between each of the holes is quite uneven, so you have some very thick threads and then some holes that are very close together with very thin threads in between. And the dancer's tights are actually like the center of the pattern, so that's what I did first. And I made a mistake where I think I did like over 3 instead of over 2, and I just realized I would continue to have that problem because I wasn't using magnification. My eyes are not as good as they used to be, so I am now, I just do it under the magnifier, which means that I have to be in a certain location where my magnifier is in my house. So it's something that I really only pull out during the day. I won't work on in the evenings. But nonetheless, I still love it and just love the way the variegation comes out. Okay. And as I mentioned, I'm putting the tea table away for a while because I'm in the cross stitch or monthly cross stitch magazine challenge. This is a group that's managed by Carolyn and Robin. They are challenging people to look into their magazines and start stitching things from them. So many people have subscriptions, or you pick it up when you go to Joann's or some other store like that. You pick up you pick it up and they've got really pretty patterns, but then they just aren't on your radar screen anymore. So every month they have a theme, and you know what the theme is. They have given those for the whole year. It started in September last year, so we know it through August this year. And so you go through your magazines and you pick something that matches that theme. And so this month the theme is actually blue, because it's Carolyn's birthday, and I guess blue is her favorite color. And so this is one that I picked. This is called In the Garden, and this is from Just Cross Stitch Country Crafts. It's from the 1990s. It's a really cute pattern. And I picked this obviously because of the blue fabric back there. There's a lot of back stitching in this, and so I decided that I didn't want to have this and the tea table going at the same time. It's very similar stitching, a lot of fractionals and back stitching, and neither one of those bother me, but just to have two things so similar going at the same time, it just wouldn't be enjoyable. It would sort of be like working on the same project. If I'm going to switch projects, I want to switch to something different. Again, I started this in December, so I would get my 200 stitches in for no new starts. So, but then I picked it back up, and this is what I had done last time. And again, this is this purple flower, and it just looks like a mass right now. There are a few more stitches that are needed, but really most of it is back stitch that I need to, it's mostly back stitch that I need to do to sort of give it definition. I picked this up both because I needed it for the monthly magazine challenge. I needed to put some stitches in it, but also because I needed for semi-sane stitchers, I needed to get some pink or red in, and Hawkhorn Hollow does not have any pink or red. So I was doing usually 300 stitches on that to get 3 colors, and then I would want to look for something else that had pink or red. So that's why you sort of see this blotchy pink down here. This is just some 961, and again, doesn't look like much now, and even especially in this pink flower, because even though I thought I had it fully kitted up, I guess when I went to buy the flosses, there were a couple of colors they were out of, and of course it was the pink. So hopefully I'll get a chance to go back to Michael's or Joann's and pick up a few more skeins of flosses that I need to finish kitting this up, and then I can really dive into it. The fabric is a 28 count linen from Lakeside Linen Aqua Mist. I absolutely love this color. I bought it probably in early 2020, so I know Lakeside can be difficult to find now. So I probably got it from 123 Stitch, but whether or not it's something they have back in stock at this point, I have no idea. But I absolutely love this color, and I think the colors, the way that these purples and pinks are just popping on it, looks really, really gorgeous. And this is the first time I've stitched on Lakeside Linen, and so far I am really loving it. The next project that I worked on was, I think you've seen this many times. This is the Sense and Sensibility salve from the Stitching Book Club. I don't have a print off, but this is part 1, and I was able to finish it off. I think last time I had only part of it done, and I made a critical mistake that you hear people so often doing, and I thought, that's never going to happen to me. And of course, once you get a little arrogant, things are going to happen. So as you can see, this whole flower here up to this part, this is all symmetrical. So I had done most of the white on this flower, and I went to move, so it's got a sort of a, it's all DMC, but she sort of, gets from the white and just gets a little bit darker as it gets closer to the center of the flower. And Kristen, the designer, had noted in the Facebook group that there was an error on the pattern, and there just like in this light brown, which I think is like 3862 or something, or 3864 even. There was just a couple. There were in one quadrant. There were 2 stitches that shouldn't have been there. So she showed where you should delete the stitches, but said you just make it match with the other 4 corners. So after I finished most of the white, I went and made sure that where the mistake was, I did the stitches there, so I wouldn't have a problem later. And I put it away probably for a week. Went to pick it back up, and said, "Okay, I know that I did my brown stitches," and so I went and started continuing to stitch. And about 80 stitches in, I must have just turned the project slightly and the light hit it in a certain way. And I had the realization that I had picked it up incorrectly, and should have been like this, and I stitched it like that. Because of course what had happened was I knew I had done this quadrant here, which is where the mistake was, or maybe it was this one, but I knew I had done the one with the mistake, but where I thought I had done the top part of the flower, I actually had started with a mistake and went down. And so I ripped out those 80 stitches. I went and I finished this flower completely. So everything was going in the right direction. It was all symmetrical. Made sure I didn't, that the mistake that was there I had done correctly. And then I stuck one little green stitch here. And then I said, I'm done for today. And so, but I put the little green stitch there because I said, I'm going to come back and I'm going to know which way is up. And because, obviously it's symmetrical in half, but not 4 ways. So it was much easier to come back and finish it. And it's a lovely stitch. Kristen is such a great designer. And I knew when going into No New Starts, even though I didn't know what the books were going to be, I knew I was going to want to do at least one of the 4 books. And so in my mind, I said, this is going to be my freebie. And sure enough, the first book was the one I really wanted to do, which is Sense and Sensibility. The next 2 are Little Women by Louisa May Alcott and The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I'm not sure of the order. I enjoy those books as well, but not as much as I like Sense and Sensibility. The last one is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which I definitely will be stitching. But because that's the last one, I can just buy the pattern and then stitch it when I'm ready to stitch it. So in 2022 or whenever. Part 2 of this has dropped, and I will start working on it later this week. Another one of the challenge groups that I'm in, that one you're just Myth and Magic. I think it's Myth and Magic Wars. There you don't have prompts to stitch for, but you stitch certain amounts, and with those stitches you're able to buy certain things, ingredients, and then your team combines those ingredients to basically to make spells, and you're competing against other teams. So basically you're stitching for numbers. Some of them numbers are as low as 50, or you can do up to 1,000, and there's lots of different ingredients you can buy. But yesterday they have what they called Stitch One, Get One Free. So if you stitch a certain amount and requested an ingredient, you would get 2 of those ingredients. So I wanted to go for a higher value item than I usually go for. I was out all day, all morning yesterday. Didn't get home till about 1:30 and needed to have lunch. So I didn't have a huge amount of stitching time before the clock shut off. The admins are based in the UK, so it was ending at their midnight, which for us on the East Coast of the US is 7 p.m. So I wanted to make sure I got as much done. So I picked up a project that would have been very easy stitching. So this is the one I picked up. This is Midnight Vigil, Heaven and Earth design, artwork by Lisa Parker. I started this at the very end of 2020 so I could get my 200 stitches in. I've done 100 stitches here or there, but not much. So I had transferred it a couple days ago into Pattern Keeper, and it was very quick to transfer the stitches because I hadn't done very much. But what I did was I said, okay, where can I do block stitching and just go? So because all this was in Pattern Keeper, once I made sure I counted from here to here, and it just went straight down. And so I had counted stitches from another project as well. I had about, I think I had about 125 stitches. I had done that one. And so I managed to get in 375 stitches on this one to get to 500, which for me in a day, especially a short day, is quite a bit. I'm not the fastest stitcher, but this was just straight shot of black. These are curtains that come down on the side. And again, this is for me, quite an easy stitch. And I love black cats. And so I'm really glad that I had a chance. Just, again, this might be considered boring stitches at time to time. Stitching 310 for me is not the most exciting thing. But when I have a goal and just am able to whip it through and know that speed does matter, I was able to whip those out really quickly. So I was glad to get a little bit more into Midnight Vigil. Also in No New Starts, we had a challenge where you tried in a 24-hour period to get 100 stitches in as many projects as possible. there was no prompt to say do this or do that. It was however you chose to do it. So I decided I was just going to spin the wheel. I put all of my projects on that wheel and spun it, and it came up. I think I did 6 of them. I did all 6 in advance. If they need to be loaded on Q-snaps or something, I did that in advance. And then when the clock started, I immediately jumped in and did it. So some of them were things I was already working on, like Huckleberry Farm. One of the good things about it was some of my pieces that I had done for the monthly magazine challenge. I started them in the fall. I was able to return to them and put a few more stitches in them. Again, the wheel decided. I didn't make any, I said, whatever comes up, just do it. And it was an excuse for me to pull out some things that I wouldn't have pulled out otherwise. So one of the projects that came up was this one. So this is from, again, an old just cross stitching country crafts from the 90s. These are what they call sister bears, Caroline and Emma. So those two little girls there. And here's where I am. So basically, again, it was 100 stitches, so it wasn't a huge amount. And it's kind of hard to see, but there's like these are the white stitches that are coming down from which starts on the dress of one of the little bears. And so this is 32 counts lambswool. I'm not entirely sure who the dyer is, but I know I got this from Kitten Stitcher, so I'm wondering if it's Extrude Designs. Because I know I did buy some Extrude Design from her, but this was a larger piece, and I used half the fabric for another piece which is already finished. And so I think the details are all, this just says 32 count lambswool. Doesn't tell me the designer, but I have all those details with the other project. So I was glad to have a chance to just put a few more stitches into that one. Also, another one from magazines that came out was this is Autumn Blessings. This is one I had started in November because we needed to, the theme was grateful, and obviously I'm grateful for Thanksgiving and the bounty that we have, and just the beauty of the landscape here in the United States. I also selected this one. Actually, November was originally really hard, and I thought, am I just going to do a turkey and say I'm grateful for Thanksgiving? But then for Crystal Academy, one of the prompts was stitch on a weather vane. And again, here at Hawkhorn Hollow, as always, came through, and there was a weather vane, but it was very hard for some of my teammates. And so I agreed that I would see if I could find another pattern that had a weather vane that I already had. And this one came up. There's a weather vane on that barn. So it worked out really well for me. I made the decision, though, I didn't, this sort of blessing here isn't really something that appealed to me. So I said, why don't I just cut it here and just do this top image here, which I find I really like, just a lot of little motifs in there. So here's where I am now. So I've got almost that whole center medallion done, and then just a few little hearts. So it will be sort of a longer piece. This fabric I won it in a giveaway from Laura Stitching by the Shore. So I'm not entirely sure what it is. It is a printed fabric, so you can see the back is just, it's a white on the back, but then you have the lovely printed modeling on the front. I absolutely love this. It's a kind of smallish piece, which is why also the size fit really well, because I tend to do larger pieces. But this is, I believe it's an 18 count fabric, but I don't know the name of it at all. But it is absolutely a beautiful fabric, and I think just the sort of rustic colors work really well with this pattern. And while the center is full coverage, that medallion, the rest of it is not, so the fabric will have a chance to shine through. Another pattern that I pulled out, you can probably guess, this was October, and this is called Ghostly Greetings, and it says have a spooktacular Halloween. Again, the pattern looks a little bit dated. This is from the 1990s, just cross stitch and country crafts, but I love the expressions on all those characters in there. So I actually put a couple hundred in for this because I think I needed to. This was also for another prompt. I needed to do 200 stitches, so it fit well with the Whip Frenzy, and as well as the other challenge. And so this, I just love all their goofy eyes, and so I know I managed to put stitches in, get most of the cat finished off, and so the whites in his eyes. And then I put a little orange in, so like that, actually that little orange blob is part of a candy corn, which will be filled out later. So again, another cute pattern, something I'll probably pull out again in the fall, but you know, what the wheel wants, and I am, you know, again, happy to put 100 stitches in almost anything. And this is, I believe it's a 16 count sort of beige Aida. It was something I probably purchased years ago from a box store. And so, but it works out really well for that pattern because I wouldn't have wanted to do, even though there's back stitching around the ghosts, I wouldn't have wanted to do those on a white fabric. There were a couple other projects I did not pull out that I put 100 stitches in, but they tend to be some of the very large ones, and so you wouldn't see any progress on those whatsoever. So moving into my stitching plans. So this is Mirabilia Portrait of Veronica. I know I've showed this before. This is a 32 count. I think it's called Star Sapphire linen from Wichelt. It is the called for fabric because I wanted, you know, obviously 32 count to make sure the beads will fit. But I had also tried another color and initially, and it just wasn't going to work. And so I just said I'm going for the called for, and that way I know things will not, that nothing will sort of be obscured in the pattern. I am doing the skin 1/1, and so I really got stuck for a long time. Now that I have my magnifier, it is moving a little bit more quickly. But even then, like in February, I think I put over 1,000 stitches in it, and that barely like took me down her neck. So there's still a lot of skin here with her chest area before you get to the dress, and then she's got an arm that doesn't, you know, she's got basically cap sleeves or whatever, and so she has her whole arm out there to be stitched. So there's quite a more of 1/1 for no new starts. One of the challenges is if someone has a birthday, they can pick a project that is currently in their that they are working on, an active project, and say, hey, if you have this pattern, why don't we do this as a stitch along? So the admins are very clear to say it is not a start along, it is a stitch along. And so, but if you don't have that particular pattern, it's something by that designer. So Mirabilia is definitely the designer, but they said, I don't remember what the pattern was. It was not this one, but it was like stitch on something from Mirabilia or Nora Corbett, who is the designer for Mirabilia. So I will pull this out and put in some stitches on this. I also joined the Supernatural group, which is a version of Stitch from Stash, basically, where in conjunction with Supernatural, the TV show, there's like an episode a week, and they pull elements out and give you prompts for, I think it's every 100 stitches you get what they call a bullet, and then you can put whatever value on that bullet you want. So I haven't really gotten that far into it yet. I'm still trying to figure that out. Probably like $1 a bullet or something, and as long as you meet the prompt. And there's no like, you can only do 200 stitches. It's do 100, do 1,000. It doesn't matter. It's all the same, and you don't have to hit all the prompts. It's really self-propelled. So anyhow, on this one, it was stitch on something that has where someone is wearing jewelry. So she's got this like tiara headpiece in her hair, but she's also got like earrings and a bracelet. So she's got the full bling going. So this piece also definitely will come out probably on Sunday, because that's when the stitch along starts for the birthday one. So again, this is one that I'll plot away on until I get the skin done, and then I think once the skin is done, at least for the rest of the cross stitches, I will fly, because I really love her dress. I think it's absolutely beautiful, which is why I purchased this pattern. Again, I think when I bought it, the store owner told me, you know, there are over 1,000 beads that you have to bead, and yes, beading is slow going, but I don't mind beading. I've done lots of projects, well, a few projects with beading in the past, and I like the three-dimensional effect, and in this case, you know, it's a lot of bling on her dress and in her jewelry, and I think it really will add to the project, so I have no problems doing that. So that's one of my plans. Two other things that I'm working on also. So WhipGo, as I mentioned, my first WhipGo pull was Huckleberry Farm. which also coincides with letter of the month. So that I get 2 for the price of 1 almost. But this was my second one. Sorry, this is Lindy Stitches. Starlight Bright. Lindy Stitches is one of my favorite designers who do some of these smaller patterns. I think she's really brilliant, and I love the way that she pulls a lot of times quotes out of books and uses those. And so this was one of when I sort of was making the mental decision that I wanted to switch from being monogamous to having multiple projects. This is one of the first ones I kitted up, and it was probably one of the first projects that I bought overdyed flosses for. And as a result for that, even though all these grainy squares, you can really use whatever color you want as long as they don't blend into the fabric, I did go for the called for colors because I was at that point was not used to using overdyed, and I wasn't really sure what that meant. And so I said, I'm going to not trust myself. I'm just going to buy what the called for is. This was a Mania start for me last year. So I don't have very much done. I started this, I had a day of stitching, and that's sort of it. And it's not a reflection of the pattern. It is simply, I was working on other Lindy stitches. I had a stitch for Sweet Freedom, which is now a completed project for me. And I really wanted to, from each designer, I sort of have one focus. And so I sort of put my effort into getting that one finished. Having said that, in addition to this one, I've also have another one, Beach Dance from Lindy Stitches. I really like Stephanie's designs, and I have others that are kitted up that I'll start next year, but I'm hoping to get some progress on the ones I have. And this fabric is it's a 32 count mint. And again, I think it's Picture This Plus. I'm not 100% sure, but I really love this color. It's really pretty. I also, for letters in the month, this is the project Evening Romance, because we're in E and F, so E. This is a project, another full coverage piece by Artecy. This is one that I have, I only have the paper pattern, and I really like the pattern, but because it is so confetti heavy, it takes a long time. So here's where I am now. I have 2 pages done, and you can see, I don't know, if, part of me says, oh, I feel like a half is done, but my guess is that it's probably only a third done of the stitches. Artecy tends not to be confetti heavy. Trina Clark, who owns Artecy, is very aware of her clientele, and a lot of them don't like heavy confetti. And so while she does not shy away from it, if there's something that needs a lot of details, her patterns probably are not as confetti heavy as Heaven and Earth designs, and they're also, whereas even the not max color, just the regular color, Hades tend to have like 89 or 90 colors. Most of hers have fewer than 50. I'm sure there are some exceptions. I'm not an expert on it, but so they tend to stitch up a little bit faster because you have, you don't always have that sort of subtle shading that you would have maybe in a Hade. But having said that, just look at this picture, you have to have the confetti in order to get the light play off of everything. So while it has, I think, fewer than 50 colors, maybe 45, 46. This one says it has 52 colors in it. It's not a lot of block stitching. It's a lot of colors, next to each other to try and give that light effect. And that's what makes it so beautiful. Again, I don't have a problem with confetti, but it just, because it's not in Pattern Keeper, it goes a little bit more slowly for me. So those are all of my stitching plans. I have other projects, obviously, when the prompts that will come out from Magical Stitches and Crystal Academy and Supernatural Stitches that will help drive what I'm stitching on. I also, for the magazine monthly challenge, this is the acrostic that goes along with it. You could do lion or lamb, or both. I've chosen to do both, but the honest answer is some of them are duplicates from other things I was already doing. For example, I have on here, let's see, Huckleberry Farm for Lamb by Blue Fowler, so the bee. obviously that's already my WIPGO, and that's already Letters of the Month, so it's just a triple dip. But again, I love that project so much, so any excuse I can have to sprinkle it and show the picture of it, I love doing that. So that is all I have for my stitching and my what I've stitched over the past 2 weeks, as well as my plans. I do have a tiny bit of haul, and then I can get into what I've been reading and watching. So I purchased, I think at Joann's when they had a sale on DMC. I picked up this issue of Just Cross Stitch. I absolutely love this cover photo, this color project rather, and the fabric behind it. So they do have information on where you can buy the fabric, but I think I'm also going to go take a look at like Bestitch Me and a few others to see if they have anything that has that kind of sky sunset modeling in it, because it's really pretty. And so that's the one that appealed to me the most. There are a few other nice patterns in here. I'm not going to do a flip through, but Carolyn Zook has a great one that she did last weekend. But this is the other project that really sort of stuck out to me, this black kitty cat. As you know, I am a bit of a cat lady. But it's, I mean, the cat, doing just a very typical cat thing of cleaning herself. But I think it's just sort of the intricate work along the border here. It's something different. It does call for a lot of flosses that I've not ever used before, and it'll be interesting to try. And then even like these little flowers are made with like a ribbon type floss, and so it would be interesting if I'm feeling adventurous to try that one day. I did drop a comment in Carolyn's video that I want to see how she's doing with it, and if she finds it not too hard, I may jump in at some point. She also did talk about on her video though that you can also buy little flowers like this at Michael's or other places and just sew them on, and so that probably, if I did that, would probably be my easy way. I know how to cross stitch. I've been doing it for a long time, but I'm not an expert at other needle arts, and so it would be very disappointing to spend so much time in all of this and then just have things that look like little blobs that they don't come out looking like flowers. That would be disappointing. So that was my first purchase. I also got from my fabric of the month from Bestitch Me. This is the February fabric. I get a 32 count Lugana. I'm in the club where she alternates it between the neutrals and the colors, and so this month I got the colored one. So here's what I got. This is the color is called Peony. It's got light modeling in it. It's a little bit more pink than what is showing in the camera right there. There it seems more lilac, but it is a little bit more pink, and it's got very light modeling, but not nearly as much as you would see often on Bestitch Me fabrics. So I don't have a lot of fabric this color. I have I do have a piece pink, so it's a little bit brighter than this from Wichelt. I did a bunny on it last year, and I have like half the fabric left. So it's that piece was probably, I doubt it was even a fat half, and then it's even half of that. So if it's either a fat eighth or even smaller than that. I look forward to expanding my color palette when I'm able to start projects again. I also won a giveaway from Denise at Black Ribbon Studio. She had a great giveaway, and so I was the lucky winner of that. So it was sort of a pack of a lot of things. So the first thing was a needle minder. And I think all of these did come from the Fat Quarter Shop when Denise was giving them away. So this was a needle minder. It's called Sew Day. Yes, that's the name of the needle minder. And I think this goes with the Stitch Along that's Sew by Row that a lot of people are working on, that you see often on Instagram and in other places. And then also just a piece of white 14 count Aida. And then I also, that she included 2 thread packs with it. So the first one, this is the thread pack for Fright Night, a Halloween pattern. So lots of oranges and blacks and some blanc. But then the one I'm really excited about, this is for the pattern. This is the Stitches from the Heart. And these are MPI, and I've never stitched with them before. A lot of the Hawkhorn Hollow charts do call for MPIs, obviously not necessarily this color palette, but I'll be really excited to try stitching with them because I have used silks before but never MPI, and so it will be really fun to try and put these in some of my projects and just see how they stitch up. So that is all I have for stitching. I have 2 books that I read. The first one was, I don't have the book here. It was a library book. It was called The Stars Are Fire by Anita Shreve. It's more sort of historical fiction in the sense that it takes place in Maine in the late 40s after World War II. And the sort of big dramatic event in it is there's a large forest fire that devastates the coast of Maine. And I believe that is a real event that happened, but then the story's a fictitious story about, a younger husband and wife who got married immediately after the war, and they have a couple of kids, and neither one of them is happy in the marriage. And then this, but they're plodding along, and then the forest fire happens, and the whole town is basically burnt down, including their own house. And they also, the husband goes missing because he became a volunteer firefighter and was trying to dig trenches to help divert the fire. And so she doesn't know what happened to him. No one does. And so basically she sort of has to take control of her life and take responsibility, find a way to earn money and find a place for everyone to live, and all of those things that, she had her husband there to help her do all of that before. So it's a nice story, very well written. Anita Shreve, I've read quite a few of her novels. Unfortunately, she has passed away now. But it's an interesting book. And so I would encourage you, if you're looking for, I don't want to say it's a light read, but it's not the heaviest read either. And Anita Shreve is a very good writer. The next book that I read was a little bit heavier than that, and this is it. It's called The Kindest Lie by Nancy Johnson. This is her debut novel, and she is a Black woman. This is a book that came out in 2021, but most of it takes place in late 2008. So Barack Obama has been elected president, but obviously the transition hasn't yet happened, so he is not yet in the White House. He's not yet president, but it's also the backdrop against the sort of the economic recession and all the troubles plaguing the auto industry at that time, and the unemployment, as well as she doesn't refer directly to the opioid crisis, but a lot of the addiction problems that also start coming out in all over the United States, but in particular the Midwest, as a lot of people a lot of the towns started to lose their economic base, and as the increased use of opioids and other drugs started to increase in those areas. So certainly a lot of the issues related to the economic downturn, those are universal, but race is also an issue as well in this book, and just how our Black families, and especially Black men, how they are disadvantaged versus their white peers. But the basis behind this story is basically a woman, the lead character. She was a teenager and she got pregnant, and she is living with her grandmother and then her older brother, who is, I think, about 6 years older than her, so significantly older than her. And she is basically, I don't want to say forced, but strongly persuaded to give up her child because she's gotten a full scholarship to go to Yale, and she doesn't, and her family is like, you need to get out of here, you need to make something of your life, and if you have this baby and stay here, you're never going to have those opportunities again. And so she basically agrees to give the baby away for adoption, but it was not done sort of through the proper channels. And so 10 years later, she's now graduated from Yale, and she's a successful, she's an engineer, and she's doing well in her job, and she's married to a great guy who's also successful in his career, and they're starting to talk about having a family, and she just can't get over what she did when she was a teenager. And so she basically goes back to her hometown to try and figure out what happened. And then there's also in this book another boy, a white boy, who also, his mother has died, and his father is they never use the word racist, but he is, but not the kind of racist that he's running around beating people up, but just the comments here or there, and the sort of pervasive racism that still exists today, and just sort of the way that he reacts to people. So this boy, who is also very intelligent and has a scientific mind, like the lead character, and he needs to have opportunities to further his education, but he doesn't have them yet. So these two meet, and it just goes on from there. What I did not like about this book is that I think she tries to throw too many things in here, and she is not a skilled enough writer to play them out successfully. I read the Hate You Give by, I believe, Angie Thomas, and I thought that book was absolutely brilliant. It touches on so many different issues related to race, but she navigates it so well. And but she's also an experienced novelist, and Nancy Johnson just isn't there yet. And so I think she is touching on things to make a point, but it feels superfluous to the novel. And secondly, for example, they occasionally talk about Barack Obama is going to be president, but they never really go into that. Is this playing on the hope of a lot of people who say things get better? Is it playing into the racism of people who are saying things going to get worse? It's just sort of thrown out there, where the economic downturn, I think, is much more important for this story. I also have a hard time with the lead character, because it must be very hard to give up a child for adoption, and I have a lot of compassion for people who make that decision, even if it is the best decision for themselves and the child. It is not an easy decision to take, and it's one that sits with you for your whole life, and I absolutely understand that. But her attitude about, well, he's my son, and just because there was a legal loophole, I don't care who gets hurt, he's my son and I want him. And one of the characters describes her as selfish, and she sort of dismisses it, but I thought, no, that is exactly what you are. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have this heavy weight to carry, and I'm not saying that you can't find out more about what happened to your son, but you don't burn everything down to the ground to get exactly what you want, because you're going to hurt so many people to get there. There are ways to get there without scorched earth policies. And that, once I sort of realized, she didn't care she didn't care if she was hurting the boy and the boy's adoptive parents, or her grandmother, or her brother, or her husband. She was going to do what she wanted. To me, that is selfish. There are ways to get what you want without hurting everyone around you. And so I had a hard time relating to her. But nonetheless, I did enjoy this novel. And I do wish the author a lot of success. I think that, as she gets to be a more skilled novelist, that she will be able to, go into a lot of those issues more into depth. So that the only other thing I just wanted to touch on a little bit about what I'm watching. So there is a new mini series on called The Luminaries. It is based on a novel. I read the novel 6 or 7 years ago. And the reason why I read it was someone said, oh, you're going to New Zealand, you have to read The Luminaries. And it was not at all what I was expecting. It takes place in when there was a gold rush in New Zealand. And so a lot of people from England and the United States and China were going to New Zealand and trying to mine for this gold. And a lot of the swindling and other bad things that happen to people, just so that people can, people are trying to make an eco-living, and it's total luck in some cases whether you find gold or not, and just a lot of poverty and what people are dealing with. So I don't historical fiction isn't normally what I gravitate towards, but because I was going to New Zealand, I read the book, and I didn't remember a lot of the details about it until I started watching the TV series. And I think one of the reasons why I struggle with it a little bit as a book is that it is historical fiction. that's fine. But then all of a sudden the paranormal gets thrown into it. And that was not what I was expecting. You know, if you want to have a fantasy book or something about the paranormal, great. But to take historical fiction and then all of a sudden throw this wrinkle into the story, it just didn't, it was a little bit hard for me to swallow. It's a little bit easier to follow in the TV show, or the miniseries. So we're enjoying watching it. Apparently the lead actress is the daughter of the singer Bono. So, you know, it makes me feel really old because I remember when they were a young band, and now he's got, you know, a daughter who's in her 20s, who's, you know, making her way as an actress. So that was you know, making me feel a little bit dated, but nonetheless, I am enjoying watching it. I think it is well acted. It is filmed in New Zealand, but I think there are very few actors who are actually from New Zealand, which fits the piece because, again, this is all about people who have come from other places to mine for gold. There are some Maori in the story, and they do play a role. So that is good to see those issues addressed as well and how badly they are treated. So it's enjoyable, but it's, you know, again, during the pandemic, I'm always looking for something different to keep myself occupied. Anyhow, this has gone on for over an hour, so I will go. Thank you for watching, and if you like what you've seen, please subscribe and please leave me a comment. All right, thank you. Have a good day.